This episode of Ladder Legacy is proudly sponsored by the Bedford Group Insurance, helping families and businesses protect what matters most. Whether it's coverage for your home, your family, your team, or your future, Bedford's got your back with the best reliable insurance solutions in Florida. Visit our website to learn more, bedfordinsurance.com. And now on to your episode.
Hey everybody, this is Rudy Romero with From Ladder to Legacy. I am here today with a very special friend of mine, Joanna Donovan, and a very special episode from Propel Resume and Career Services. By the way, if people don't know what Propel is, it's a place that helps job seekers at every stage of their career by creating powerful ATS-optimized resumes, building professional and personal brands, providing interview and career coaching. Their mission is to help people move forward in their careers with clarity and confidence. And I am excited to have some clarity and confidence today because it has been a fun weekend and even more fun Monday. John, how are you doing today?
Fantastic. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course, it's a pleasure. I'm excited to have you on. I know we've had some interesting people on, but I haven't had anybody help us figure ourselves out and provide some clarity. And I am very excited to have you on today because I can use it this morning on our very cloudy day. So tell me about what you've been up to.
Well, it's been a busy fourth quarter and actually a busy year. It's been a lot of transition. As you know, the job market's been really crazy. So I've been helping folks from grad school all the way up to seasoned professionals really try to figure out their why and where they belong and how to get there. And it's kind of rewarding to it's sad in one respect that people are having to do these transitions, but it's really interesting to learn people's backgrounds. And all of this has actually catapulted me at the beginning of next year. I will actually be bringing my coursework to the adult education school here in Wellington, so that way I can do some in-person training, which is nice. So I'm developing the programming for that, and it'll be interesting to see who comes out and gets to be a part of that in-person coaching and writing seminars that I have.
That's really exciting. And you said something I thought was really interesting. And being out of the job market as an employee for a little while now, not that long, as I started my ascent to legacy over the ladder. Why do you think it is? So, your services are obviously great, but like people using them, that means things are good in the economy, things are bad. I know you're not an economist, but what are you seeing right now that's happening?
That's a great question. It's a kind of a mixed bag, really. There are people who are trying to advance. There are kids coming out of college that are trying to figure out their first corporate job. And then we have, as you can have seen in the media, there are a lot of giant companies that are doing a full sweep of their budgeting and letting go thousands of people. I forget which company it was recently. I read that they were letting go like 11,000 people. That's a lot of folks to be displaced with a market that's already challenging. So I'm seeing it all over, but specifically it's the folks who are impacted by maybe government jobs and they want to get into corporate now so that they have a little more sustainability. And then of course the kids mostly that are coming out of college, a lot of which did not participate in internships. And so now they're basically trying to get into the market from ground zero, no experience whatsoever, solely relying on the education that they just received.
And that's crazy. So one thing, I spent some time in the DMV. I was in Virginia for years. I worked in hand with the government in my prior professions. To hear that the government is not as stable and people are moving to private organizations, what mind blown, right? Because the DMV, just so our listeners, that's DC, Maryland, Virginia, is commonly known as the government essentially supports to take DC and take 25 miles around DC. That's essentially 70%, maybe 60% government employees. And I know we're going through a shutdown right now, I believe still. I don't think the House and the Senate and everyone over there in the wonderful ivory tower has figured that out yet. But has it that quickly been affecting what you're seeing, even in Florida?
Absolutely. I think more specifically, I have seen it on the education side of the business where the teachers are being impacted. They're not getting, some of them are in higher levels, like working for the Department of Education and being more on the administrative side. And they're the ones that are actually feeling the pinch and trying to figure out how to repurpose themselves. So we've seen that tech has really done a major shift also. So those are also in the government sector. So you definitely have a lot of folks who maybe were military, had great placement once they came out of military, and now finding themselves at the short end of the stick with all of the budget cuts and trying to really tighten the manpower, if you will, that is in each department, or whole departments being eliminated because of the fact that the government feels that they were excessive, weren't possibly needed at, at whatever stage they were just implemented. But it's a variety of reasons. But yeah, it's a lot of different people, a lot of different reasons. And I agree with you. I think when you think government, they're never going away. They're always going to be there. You can look at it as a retirement type of plan, but it just goes to show you there is no absolutes in this world.
100%. And I don't think, many of the listeners, probably in the Palm Beach County area here, my understanding, Palm Beach County schools is the same thing. They've had a huge drop in enrollments in the last, I think, 24 months or so. I think, but to the tune of 4%, which is pretty significant. And they've had to lay off teachers, or from my understanding, furlough is the right word. I'm not 100% sure, but they've gone through it also. So even from a local government perspective, it sounds like instability, just from top to bottom, right? To local government to federal, it seems like there's a lot of instability. I mean, that's a crazy thought to think in today's day and age, that the government isn't the place where people can go to find jobs anymore. And they're having to look at private organizations. I mean, I don't know. Is that a positive? Is it a negative? I'm not really sure.
It's a case by case for sure.
So what got you to create this organization? So what made you think, hey, one day I want to go out there and help people get into better careers or get into a career? What was the antithesis of all of this?
I found that I had been sort of the go-to person in my circle for people who needed to get into an area that I already had experience in. So I've come from a number of different backgrounds. It's sales, it's marketing, real estate, finance, etc. And having sort of the inside track as to what happens in those particular sectors has been the point of conversation for a lot of folks. And most recently, within the last few years, I decided to go back to school. It wasn't something that I had actually done early on. I had kids and what have you, so it kind of derailed me from an economic standpoint. So I went back to school and decided that exploring this from a help perspective, trying to take English and really trying to figure out how to implement it with people would be a great way to do it. And there's no straight path when you go to college. It doesn't tell you, take this course or this degree and you're automatically going to become a resume writer or a coach. You have to start with the basics, which a lot of people dislike, where you have your core classes of English, and there's a lot of English with your bachelor's in English. I decided at that point that I wanted to be a technical writer. But when I came out, I thought, that really doesn't help me. How else can I take this knowledge and try to pair it with something that can serve others? And so there were some national organizations that I joined and went through their certification processes, both for coaching and for writing. And it really opened the doors to what's happening behind the scenes. It gave me additional ammunition when folks in my circle were coming to me for help. And I said, you know what? There has to be something here for me to work with on a more global level. And so I tested the waters for about a year, trying to figure out what's the niche, what's the place that people need help most with. And I skilled up. And hopefully from this, people will see some sort of path for themselves that, at any age, and I'm in my mid-50s, you can come back to school. You can do something a little bit different with your life rather than what you might have started out with when you came out of college in our 20s. And it started to explode. People started to come to me more and more. Right now, my business is nearly referral based, which is very nice. That is a great testament to the people that I've helped place. And I'll be clear, I am not a recruiter, but I do help people assess jobs to make sure they're good fits for themselves before they start to apply. And it's also the basis for us to help build content. So that collaboration has been very successful over the last few years for me and for my clients. And it's just been snowballing from there. And I'm really excited about all of the people who did obtain jobs. They got great interviews, they landed great roles, and they're on their way. So I feel compelled to keep going and continue to help people and hopefully get the word out not only locally, but nationally as well.
Yeah. And I like what you talked about there when it comes to college. Too many people rely on a degree to get to the success that they think they're going to find, right? And that, I'm a perfect example of, I only had an associate's degree. I think it was till 2017, 2018. I went back to school because at the time I was in a different profession, didn't feel like I needed it, right? Went back, obtained it, got that paper. And then I thought, oh, maybe I need a master's degree. Oh, what am I getting this degree? Maybe I need a doctoral degree, right? And I think that there's this misconception, and again, please correct me, and maybe there's better statistics here. You don't always need to get an MBA to be successful. You don't always need a bachelor's degree. College is great, but if anything has taught us anything, including there's a show called South Park, I'm sure you know or have heard of it. There's great trades. There's great other opportunities out there. Starting a business does not require a degree. It requires knowledge, but doesn't require you to have a formal degree. There's so many other ways to obtain success here in America. It doesn't have to be, like you said, that straight line path. I mean, my personal path has gone up, down, left, right, in between, center. I'm sure yours is the same thing. Not every year is going to be a great year, just like not every day is going to be a great day. But it's about picking yourself back up and figuring out the solutions. And it sounds like what you're doing here is you're giving people opportunity to really share their story with you and figure out what that vision is, what that want for them in the future is going to be, not just the 9 to 5 that they need to clock in and clock out. So with that said, how did you get started on it? Because I mean, that is, you said you had some people, friends coming to you and all that, but when did it click for you as an entrepreneur? Because that's what you are. You're an entrepreneur, you're a business owner. When did that click for you? Because I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, is they don't know when to finally act on something, right? Hesitation, or they're scared, or I need a $50,000 loan from the SBA, right? Are these just ridiculous notions that are just out there? Are they real? What did you do?
That's a great question. I took it slow because I really needed to be sure that what I was offering was sustainable. And that really is key. And it's a scary jump, especially coming from corporate and then getting into, this business where you're responsible for yourself and possibly down the road for others. It really becomes an investment in yourself and a lot of research to really figure out what's the market showing you, what kind of people are coming or gravitating towards you. This kind of business has very low overhead. I mean, I do everything from home, and that helps with not having to get a loan, or it's more of a personal investment, the certifications, making sure that I know what's happening in the market by learning from the experts, people who have been in the business for years. And I believe that I've developed a great collection of advice and best practices that I now pass on as an advocacy and as a partnership to my clients. So I did it slow. I mean, I basically went out to LinkedIn. I started to communicate, and that is key for anything that you do, whether you're looking for a job or you're looking to be an entrepreneur. You have to communicate with others and find out just basically putting your ear to the ground. What do people need? What do people want? And I wanted to offer something different than what others. So there are other big organizations who do resume writing and coaching, and they're more sort of a boxed type of service where you pay a fee and you get just a smidge and then you're on your way. I invest more time with my clients, and so they feel like they have someone to go on the journey with them. And so that business model was part of this research that I did to make sure that what I was offering was different than someone else, and that I was still bringing lots of value along the way. And so most of us, when we're going through a journey, whether it's on an entrepreneurial level or we're going to accept an offer at a corporate job, we're always looking to our spouses or our significant others or even our parents when we're younger. What do you think? Is this is this a great idea? What should I ask? My job is to sort of supplement who you would come to for that advice. So when you get into a partnership, that is something that people actually love about the service because they don't get that everywhere else. So it was a slow grow. I went out and I did a lot of pro bono work. I made sure that I was speaking to people who were on the lower level where maybe they had not the economic means to hire a writer and find out what is it they needed to help them get onto that first rung of the ladder. So I spent the first year really doing a lot of pro bono work, making sure those folks were getting off the ground and they were being successful. And once that pilot was done, I started to grow into the niches that I really do favor because of my experience in the past, and then built all of my programming around that in certain capacities. And it's an evolution. Even when you start with something, there's always growth. There's always a pivot depending on how the markets behave. And so I continue to evolve with the market as people have needs and as people are navigating different norms. So as much as you can prepare at the beginning for what your entrepreneurial travel is going to be, You have to be adaptable and flexible at all times. I mean, you know this. You try a lot of different things yourself. So if you're open to those experiences, entrepreneurial, endeavors can be really a lot of fun.
That's really well said. And I love what you're saying. It's not like people can come to you and just say, "Hey, I'm going to stick you in a job somewhere," right? It sounds like you're providing more than that, which, I mean, I would love to be able to speak to somebody who is as well informed as you at any time of the day and be able to get good information like that. Get good feedback. I mean, that's what we're all looking for, right? We can go on ChatGPT and ask about, hey, does my resume look good? Or, hey, should I speak like this during an interview? But there's one thing AI doesn't have, and that's a personality. At least not yet, thankfully, right? That's when Skynet takes over. But for now, and I think, and I've used the AI, and actually just had the Bot Queen on here not that long ago. I just had some meal with her the other day. We were talking about AI and all the advantages and all the great things it's doing. And she was down at FAU. And now I have to tell her I'm talking about her now because she's going to go and say, "Oh, Rudy talked about me again on here." There's so many great options. It's just, it doesn't replace it. AI is not going to replace what you are doing. Sure, I'm sure you can use it to help you with mannerisms, with comma placements, right? Run-on sentences. Sure, that's great. We've had that for years though, right? It's really no difference. The only difference is that you don't have to really explain what you're looking for. Hey, fix this for me. Think I'm a writer. But it's missing soul. And that's the one thing that I think, in all this, in the conversation we're having, I think that's one thing that excites me is that you have a soul, you're doing something, you have experiences. AI doesn't have that. They're never going to have it. It's just going to have a culmination of somebody else's experiences who've put that program together. And they're never going to have your experience, which is going to give them the ability to be successful. And I like you're just not just pushing careers, you're pushing futures, you're pushing the legacy part. And this is why, listeners, this is why I wanted Joanna on here today. I wanted you to push the legacy part of this. And with that said, the legacy part, have you been finding more people are pushing for career advancement, career changes, or just general entrepreneurship questions?
It's more pivoting, finding something that's more fulfilling, because I think a lot of the careers are cookie cutter. And I hate to say it that way because it sounds really awful, but it really is commonplace. You think about over the last 20 or 30 years, it was ingrained in you. You go to college, you get a degree, you go into this job and you stay there. Inherently, there's nothing wrong with that if the job is fulfilling, but by and large, once people get into those roles, they're finding that they're not contributing to the greater good. They're not finding purpose. They're not finding a mission that they can adopt. And so the pivoting becomes really essential. And I mentioned teachers earlier. A lot of them are very upset with a lot of different things, from maybe pay through just being pure appreciation for what they bring to the table. And it doesn't matter whether they're university professors or if they're kindergarten or even in daycare. They're looking for a greater purpose, and a lot of them are trying to take the skills they've built and try to adopt them into a new career. What could they do that would not send them back to school? And they could use their real world experience, their communication, all that transferable skills that we use in every single job, and figure out how to repurpose them. And a lot of the conversations that I have with folks is to really help them identify that A, they can transition to something else, but B, they need to figure out what do they enjoy in order to get to that space. Because I could tell you anything. I can say, you know what, Rudy, you should just go open up a big box store and you're going to be totally happy. That's not going to solve your problem. You're going to get in there and probably like, this is really not me, because you haven't found out your why, figured out what you enjoy. For example, I had a woman recently. She's here in Palm Beach County, and she had come from a 20-year background in banking. And I asked every one of my clients, if money was not a factor, what would you be doing? And this woman said, I would be a dog walker because I absolutely love pets. Now, it was a response I did not expect because she had spent such an extraordinary amount of time in banking. And although she did not go into that world, she now self-identifies with something that she needs to do personally for herself. And it helped her sort of take a step back and figure out, okay, maybe dog walking is not sustainable for me, but I can adopt that level of enjoyment and figure out something else within my field that I want to do. And she figured out just being one-on-one with people, having that personalized touch that she was not getting before, was going to be something that would help her in the next stage of her career. And she did eventually find, pretty quickly I might add, it was probably within a couple of weeks, she did her networking and she ended up getting into a role that fulfilled and checked off all the boxes that she needed. But she wouldn't have had that had she just simply started applying to apply. She had to have that deeper conversation.
That's awesome. And that's, I think, one of the things, and I'm hoping you can answer it for me, is like, what do you provide, like a test, an assessment? Like, because again, that's really introspective. You really have to dig in there. I mean, you get to our ages, right? We start talking about the careers we've had in the past and where we're looking to go. I mean, you really got to start digging in. So do you have like tools that you use to dig into it? Or is it just a template that you've created? Like, how are you doing that? Because I can't imagine it's easy to kind of break through some of those barriers for people, because we've all just worked because we work because we have to make money to provide for our families. Some of us have been in professions we've loved, and I'm sure some of us are doing things we can't stand and don't want to do anymore. Like, how do you dig into that? Because that just seems like that's a ball of yarn, if I had to guess.
It is. It is. I've evolved to doing a couple of things. The folks that need these conversations are what I call my coaching clients, people who need a little more hand holding to find their why. I developed a couple of worksheets that help them with, one, with career goals, and two, helping them identify what people come to them for the most. What assistance are they SMEs or subject matter experts in within their field? And sometimes the visualization, putting it to paper, helps them identify, oh my God, I really do a lot of things, or I'm really good at X, Y, and Z. I also provide DISC assessments because not only do I need to know folks before I write for them, I need to know exactly what kind of teams they would excel on. I need to know what kind of companies would excite them. Every company has a different mission. They have a different platform that they're driving off of. And we don't align with every one of them. So I have to dig deeper with some of these folks to find out what is it that they need to align on so that we can identify the right companies and then look further into the right roles. If you don't do these extra steps, you're missing the mark. You're missing the messaging, the branding that you bring to the table. So I have to start with something very simplistic, and that is conversation, worksheets, and DISC assessment. And you'd be surprised by the level of amazement some of these folks have when you read back to them what they have shared with you, either from the assessment or the worksheets. And they're like, I never even thought about myself. It's really having that introspection that helps them really dig out of a rut or a 20-year identity crisis, if you will.
What were you doing before this? I mean, you obviously seem like you're a seriously subject matter expert here. So was this always the career path you wanted to go on, or is this something that was new for you? Tell me more about, what was your mindset prior to starting this?
I think somewhere deep down, I'd always wanted to have my own business. I didn't quite sure know what kind of business I wanted. When I first moved to Florida, I actually had a gift basket business because it was something that gave people joy, and I really loved the creative aspect of it. My majority of my career started in real estate. I did that for, I don't know, the better part of 20 years in all facets. I was doing sales, I was doing marketing, I was doing a bit of IT, building websites to do, some work on the real estate side. I was in construction, and all of that led to just the networking aspect. I grew quite a community of people. That led me to a number of different paths. You mentioned having a windy road for yourself. Very true of me. I moved into administrative role where I could kind of see the entire organization from the ground. I could go into finance, I could go into manufacturing or sales or what have you, and kind of understand the language, understand the mission of the company, the product, the service. And I've just sort of adopted that as sort of a building block for myself. And I felt I had all this knowledge and all of this exposure. It needs to go somewhere. It needs to have some outlet where I can use it for assistance for others. And that's when I went back to school, I said, what can I do with this degree? And so I've paired all of this knowledge, the creativity that's been bottled up for the several years, I might add, and then this technical side of myself that I just got out of school with, to try and get this perfect storm of services and advocacy and partnership to help people with their careers. So much so that the experience has actually helped me with some of the new grads that I'm working with. They actually don't have any idea how to read the job description. I had one guy come to me and he said, I don't really know what I'm applying for. And I said, well, let's go line by line. Let's talk about all the things they're expecting you to have. And his perception was they want me to know all of this before I walk in the door. And I said, no, they're really asking you to be cognizant of what you'll be responsible for once you get caught up to speed. And he said to me, how do you know all of this? And I said, after 20 years of doing these jobs, I did all the jobs he was after. I had been in some capacity because he was in entry level roles. I said, you just become seasoned. You come to know this information. And so now I'm able to pass on my knowledge, my firsthand experience on how to explain even just a simple job description to someone so that they're applying for the right job. So it's been quite a journey. I do enjoy, and I would not change not one thing in my history. I would not change not one job that I've taken. I've been laid off from a few jobs. I would not have changed any of that because it definitely shapes who you are and what you can bring to the table for others.
So when you talk about grads, because I know you say you work with grads a lot, and again, I don't want to get into generation bashing. There's a lot of things out there about Z and millennials. People have a thing to say about something. But are you seeing that college grads today, even, like myself, I had graduated high school, I want to think it was 08 or 09. And when I graduated high school, what I wanted to find out, for me, when it was during the economic downturn, as they'd say, what was a way for me to understand and kind of obtain knowledge? Do you see that these kids today, or the younger generation today, you just said, couldn't read a job description. Do you think that it's something from a parent standpoint? Is it an education standpoint? Is it just plain just don't know because they don't know? Do you feel like they know less today than maybe the older generation knew going into the job market? Or are they coming in later because they're going to college? They're not as seasoned with those basic entry level positions at 18 or 19, when they're really obtaining those basic entry level positions at more like 21, 22 now, because they spent 2 to 4 years at college and didn't really get that life experience that, we'll call it, the baby boomers and an older generation obtained because they had to work?
That's a great question. It's kind of a mixed bag because we're having an unprecedented time where we have so many different generations in this market. And I believe, based on my recollection of job descriptions that we used to have years ago, and for those who are in the younger crowd, we used to have them in the newspaper, but
Classifieds.
they were very short. If you recall, and I don't know if you recall this, but they were very short blurbs. You had to pay for a certain amount of words, so they were not as comprehensive as they are now. And I think what happens as we've gone through this transition into computers and AI and just the digital phase of our workforce, they have more room to explain the perfect person that they need. And it scares a lot of folks. So it's not that they're not prepared from a parental standpoint, although I'm pretty sure that if we probably took the time to describe some of these jobs to our kids, we probably would give them a little bit more of a leg up. But if the child doesn't know exactly what they're going to school for or what that ultimate job is, they're already behind the eight ball. I think school, the guidance counselors, the career centers have a responsibility here to stay in touch with these grads as they're coming through the system and help guide them, at least if they don't help them find a role, that they explain to them what is happening in each sector, if you will, so that they get a better understanding of what they're signing up for. I think that it is sometimes a little too complicated in the way that some of these jobs are written. They're looking for a unicorn of some degree when they're looking for an employee. And it scares a lot of these grads that they don't want to apply. They don't feel that they've got imposter syndrome. That's, one of the newer terms that we've had in this last generation. But essentially, we have to have a personal responsibility to ask questions, have that communication, not hide behind a computer, to be able to have the conversations with our network, with our teachers, our parents, our neighbors, our friends. People who are in the jobs doing shadowing is also a great way to kind of get a full understanding of the type of roles are out there and kind of ask the questions about, what do you do every day? What do you like about what you do? What don't you like? What part of the job description do you actually do? There's so many things to unpackage there, and it would take probably a lifetime to get through it. So my whole perspective is you have to start somewhere. You have to try something, even if it's entry level. You've got to try something where you at least get your foot in the door. Maybe it's the company you'd like to work for, and then look around and ask your questions. Ask people in a position that you would want to be in. Tell me about your job. Tell me what you do every day. That gives them a little bit more of a live action, if you will, as to what's happening on the ground with a person, rather than asking Google, what does this do? You can have that dialogue and really fine tune your questioning and get real world examples that help you make better decisions. So, we could probably talk a whole hour on this particular subject, but that to me in a short form is something that we just have to keep talking. We have to keep having the conversations in order to mitigate the amount of confusion that's out there on jobs.
And do you think the generation, and I love what you just said about multiple generations competing, do you think that is truly a problem in today's market? We'll just talk about Florida because the rest of the world is their own problem, but we'll just say Florida's market. Speaking from somebody personally who has hired, younger employees as well as people who are senior citizens in my businesses. What are you seeing now in a job market perspective? Are you seeing people competing from a entry level position for retirees and vice versa, flipped entry level positions, maybe that, got a master's degree that has absolutely zero experience, but is applying that will be $30,000 or $40,000 cheaper than somebody who may be getting into their later years of business and then being let go. And for these people who have these degrees that may not have life experience, but on paper have what's supposed to be there? What's kind of the makeup?
It depends on the industry, really. I think the one industry that's having the most difficulty is IT. And there's so many different facets to IT because you have the cybersecurity line, you have the programming, you have the service end of things. So it depends on what you're looking at. I have a few grads who are in software engineering and they don't have the internship, so they don't have the built-in experience from a co-op or an internship, and they're being passed over because the companies are looking for people with 2 to 4 years of experience and they're considering that entry level. On the flip side, you have folks who have been in the job market for 20 plus years. They're looked at from an unfortunate lens of, well, maybe you're going to retire in a couple of years. I don't want to invest my money if this is where you're going to go. But what's really happening is the folks that are at the longevity side of the scale, they're not looking to retire anytime soon because it's too expensive to retire. So they're wanting to stay. They want to keep working, and they're finding the ageism is their problem. So the people who are in the middle are the ones having the highest competition. They've got the right mix of education, experience level, and maybe geographically they're in the right locations for certain companies. So they're the ones in the most competition for good jobs, good paying jobs. It's the ones on the peripheral, in my opinion, that are really struggling. But the good news is there are companies who have development programs for the kids coming out of school who will take them, give them a training program, pay them, get their skills level up, but they have a finite time with them. Could be a year, could be 18 months. And at that point, they have to go on and find another job. So it's almost like a contract work. On the flip side, we have some companies who actually welcome retirees. There is a company called CDK Global down in Fort Lauderdale. They actually want retirees to come because they like the fact that they've brought all their years of experience, world experience with them, and can help the younger sets when they're all mingled on a team and be able to give them another side of the coin, way of looking at a particular problem, and likewise they're learning from maybe the Gen Zers that are actually in the marketplace. So it's a nice balance if the companies offer it. I'd like to see more companies offer that kind of programming, but it does become more challenging for not so much that you're competing against others, but you're competing against yourself.
Interesting. That's really interesting to hear that. I mean, I would rather compete against others than myself. I'm a crazy guy, so I'm a lot of competition here, but wow. Okay. And what are your thoughts on, I'm trying to think, how do I word it? So do you think it's going to get easier before it gets better? Or do you think we're still kind of with the government shutdown, with, transientness happening here, Florida, it's kind of go through its second revival, whatever you want to call it, of people moving down here. What do you think is next for the Florida?
Well, that's a loaded question. I'm not really sure. It's really been interesting lately, but one thing that I do know is You can take this market and benchmark it against any other in history, and my feeling is that it's the same. You just have different economic challenges. So you think about, let's take the 80s for example. That was, a transition for a lot of folks who were trying to get their longevity jobs. They were really trying to, get themselves established, and essentially they were being beat out by the younger crowd too. You have people who are getting into newer types of jobs, with computers and whatever. There have been a new transition of jobs, but now you have more competition. So there's another outlier that in each market that is impacting. So to me, the struggle is the same, no matter which generation in time, or which decade, I should say, in time that you look at. It's just a different challenge. To me, the challenge is still the same. It's still a challenge. It's not any harder. It's just different. And so each time we go through an iteration of change, it makes entrepreneurial endeavors pop up like crazy, gives people a little more, to think about in terms of what could they capitalize on. It also makes people more adaptable, because if they're not going to be in a job that's sustainable any longer, they got to figure out a new way and a new space to be in. And people are finding it. It might take them a little time, but they're doing it. And I think as you look at each one of them, it's just the same. I hear it all the time. They're like, oh, it's such a challenging job market. It was challenging it was challenging during COVID. And look what happened. We had the Great Resignation. People were switching jobs left and right, and they were making more money than they were the year prior. And it's because they were looking for people with specific skill sets, and they didn't care where they were located. So you had all of this change go on. People adapted. People found their space. Was there a unfortunate part of the community that did not find work? True. You have your workers in restaurants, some healthcare workers who, could not make it in or became ill from COVID. You had folks you have the police department, they were first responders. You still had to have them out in the field, but you had others where you couldn't be in person, so they had to adapt and do whatever. Some of them went on to opening daycares to help those people who needed that kind of assistance. So there's a way around figuring out the challenges in each market, and so you have to look at them for what they are in the decade that they're in. I don't know if that was a little overkill, but I just feel like it seems to be grandstanding by the press a lot, and it really should just be looked at for the challenges that you're having at that particular moment.
No, I love that response. That is like, in my mind, what I think. Doesn't mean I'm always right, but it's what I think. It's cyclical. Everything is cyclical. The world lives in equilibrium. When things become out of equilibrium, they change, and the pendulum swings to try and create balance again. It does not matter where it is. Nature wants to find balance. And I think the same thing, like you said, we've gone through challenges. It doesn't matter if you're after World War II with thousands of people coming back and all the pregnancies and the boom, right? It doesn't matter if it's the 80s and dealing with all the things that transpired then, whether it be the 90s. I mean, it does not matter. It is the same thing. We're just going through a cyclical cycle of dealing with what today's thing. And again, like you said, I call it legacy media. The media likes to do what the media does, right? They need to make money. How they make money is by showing you all the good and bad things. Sometimes more bad than good. And that's how they make their money, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean it's real or right. It's the people like yourself who are kind of in the trenches every day who get to really help us understand what's going on, because the only hat you have in this race, or the only pony you have, is helping people. That's the best part. So your word, what you're telling us, provides us with a really fair, balanced answer. I know there's a quote I love to quote all the time. It's hard times create strong men create good times. Good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. Whether it be men, woman, doesn't matter in that situation. But if we are in hard times, as we always are, and we're persevering, whether it be entrepreneurs or hardworking executives or first time in the job market, if you are working and persevering, I don't know any employer who is interested in just hiring somebody for a body. They want to hire somebody, and I can personally speak to it. It's the who. I'm hiring the person. 80-90% of jobs can be taught. Good times or bad. Sure, physicians, attorneys, there are positions that you really need to get a specific education or certification for to be able to act in those jobs. Most jobs can be taught to somebody if someone just has the patience and time to give somebody 10 minutes of their time. And I think it's part of what today's general generation, all the generations combined, there's no time anymore. Nobody has time for anybody. Nobody wants to sit down and have a conversation about how do you solve the problems, right? We just want to go into our instant internet because there's no dial-up anymore, to our instant AI because we don't want to look on Wikipedia or in the encyclopedia to provide an instant answer because everybody wants something instantly. But that's not how life works. Life isn't maybe created in an instant, but it's a long life to live, right? And to expect that you're just going to get something instantaneously, immediately, it's the wrong thing. And I think that's part of what these poor college kids, they think they get these $70,000 pieces of paper and they just go out there. And then that just means that they deserve that position because they got this expensive piece of paper. And somewhere up here, I don't know if the camera will tilt up to it, but I have all my expensive pieces of paper on the wall there and all the fun certifications. And they've provided me the next opportunity. They have not yet gotten me the opportunity. They provided me with the ability to open the door. They not pushed me through it. I didn't get a special payoff where it was like, oh, you got a piece of paper. You get to just walk through here. Here's your instantaneous opportunity. It required so much more than that, right? With that said, requiring so much more than that, what are you seeing for these grads and college students when it comes to having to take on outside extracurricular activities? Because for a while, extracurriculars, whether it be student council, I was vice president of the Hebrew Club, and we were part of MAD, right? All these different organizations in high school that they wanted you to be a part of. Has that changed? Has it changed where they want you to be more involved with the business that you're interested in? Or is it still, hey, we want you to be community driven with good education, and then we'll talk about your career next? What is that kind of looking like that for kids now? Because I know when I was transitioning out of that, it was all about the extracurriculars. What are you doing more? Because everyone's got good grades. Everyone has a 4.0. That's easy. What else are you doing?
I think it depends on the university or college that they go to and what they're pushing as their agenda. I do see that just about every one of the students that I've worked with had some interest in leadership. They had been part of some volunteering, and I like seeing that. Honestly, it's more now than it had been when I was going to school. It wasn't a priority to be part of anything in your community. Now, of course, as you're familiar with, especially here in Florida, is you have to have community service hours, and I like that. I like that it gets the kids out of their shell, gets them out from behind the computer, gets them into speaking with people one-on-one and helping others. It doesn't necessarily have to be in their line of work. I think the internships need to be in their line of work, but the volunteering and the leadership, that is just a simple demonstration that you're capable of handling a bigger picture. That you're able to be given some mission, project, task, and you're able to help others along with you to get it done. That's just as valuable as getting that piece of paper you talked about, because yes, everyone can get that. Everyone can achieve a 4.0 if they put their mind to it. But it's getting into the trenches and actually applying themselves and being able to adopt that, task of being the leader or being someone who's involved with community, to show more about how they would behave on a team, how they would behave inside a large organization. And they're looking at that not as the only piece that's important when, hiring managers and recruiters are looking at it. They're looking at your global picture. Are you really being a well-rounded individual? And that is more attractive to them than you must do this or you must do that. They want to see that there's something beyond you sitting behind a computer. And because nowadays there's a lot of kids who are doing their entire degree right from the comfort of their home. They don't even step onto a campus, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to be able to show another dimension to yourself so that they don't see you as a closeted individual, that you're not a great communicator or not a great collaborator. Those opportunities give that extra color, that extra pizzazz. And it's a great segue, because when I help and it doesn't matter which stage of career they're in, any of my clients, when we start talking about their LinkedIn profile, I tell them, add something personal about yourself. Breaks the ice. It shows something more personal about you, that you're willing to exchange a set of ideas with others. And it just gives you a much more interesting, I guess, brand, if you will, when someone's trying to consider you for their team. It can even be the picture that you put as your backdrop for your all that matters. And so it kind of lends itself, if you've done these things, then you could talk about them. You can branch out and give them a little more of a personal approach or viewpoint of yourself. So I think it's important overall. I think it is something that's been a constant, and I hope that they continue to do it because it really does help them, and a lot of times expose themselves to jobs or situations that they may not have considered as possibly a career choice.
I never thought I'd go from emergency services into home building. That was never a thought. And then into insurance sales. Wow. Totally. Again, we've talked about my career ladder, ascended, whatever you want to call what I've done. And there's so much more, right? You don't, and that's what I like about the DISC assessments, right? And people take these as gospel. And I think that's part of the problem is they don't have someone like you to interpret. Interpretation, any data is so important. It does not matter what the ones and zeros says if the person interpreting the data doesn't understand the context. And I think this is where, not to sit here and just keep plugging away at it, but this is where I see value with people speaking with you because data is just that. It's just information. It's just binary code. It means nothing without somebody can help you interpret it. And, when you get out of college, when you're in high school, I remember I took 7, 8 of those assessments in high school, and it just kept saying the same exact thing. Become a cop, become a cop, become a cop, 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 cop. And I did it. Cool. I'm not doing it anymore, though. So obviously there was either something wrong with how I was providing the answers, the test itself, or the interpretation. And I truly think we'll split the middle. We'll just say it's the interpretation. And I think with that said, I hope that more, especially in Wellington, this area here, in the area we're in, Palm Beach County, the opportunity for people to give their children a great leg up in life. I feel like this is almost one of those, say, like life courses that really people should go through, just like understanding your finances, balancing your checkbook, learning CPR and first aid, basic life human skills, right? These are things that guidance counselors who have hundreds of kids, just they can't take the time to do what you're talking. It's just impossible for what's being asked of them. And it shouldn't just be a guess on your career and let me just say before I say it, I'm not saying that everyone should be given a career at birth and just said, hey, this is what you're going to do. Not at all. But imagine if kids could be given the opportunity, like you said, using community service hours to figure out the opportunity for internships at a younger age in the freshmen or sophomores, right? Given the opportunity to try things out. Sure, it'd be a lot of strain on businesses, but I would love to do that in my businesses. I'd love to be that opportunity where I can have kids try things out because I would have probably led a different career and I don't change anything. I love the life. I can't say I regret anything, but how much different it could have been if a couple of these things that you've talked about kind of came to fruition. I think it would have been a more interesting world I was running through. But nevertheless, when it comes to the school systems, do you feel like the kids are getting what they need at that high school level to be able to transition into college, or are they just focused on get the good grades and get out of here and keep our scores to the right?
I think that the school, and I want to be clear, this is across the country. It's not simply in Florida. Coming from the education lineup I had in high school and what is happening now, first of all, it needs to start in the high school level before they even get to college. We used to get, to your point, we used to have life skill classes. We used to learn how to type. At that time, and again, I'm dating myself, but there was no computers at this point. They were just starting to introduce, yes, that ugly word. They just started introducing word processing systems. Wang was the first computer to hit the college circuit. And it was fascinating. And there were things that we were exposed to because they saw the value of new processes, new innovation, new techniques, paired with things that should have been staples like typing. Shorthand, which I don't even know if any school teaches anymore. I used to have a friend who was #1 in the state of New York just for shorthand, and she was doing well over 100 words a minute. Just little things that help try to round out your skill sets before you even get to the college level. It's not happening anymore. They don't have them, or if they have them, you're competing with all the other students to get into the one class that is available. So when my kids were going through Palm Beach Central, there was one typing class, and it was a lottery system. Not everybody could apply for it. And that's sad because then you only have a small percentage of the kids who actually get to learn how to type. So my kids, I had to buy them a program and have them learn at home. Now, I'm pretty sure they're still two-finger typists. They're faster at it, but it becomes problematic when they want to be gamers and they want to code. They could be doing it so much faster if they had actually done a typing class. There used to be home economics. For those of you who don't know it, it was sewing, cooking. They used to have shop. They may still have shop in some schools. But those gave you those life skills, hands-on type of programming that you don't get anymore. And I want to be very clear for those who don't want to go to college and you're looking for a path, and electrical, HVAC, plumbing, they make an enormous amount of money. You can go to a trade school and you can absolutely be part of a solution that is plaguing us right now, where we don't have enough of these trades because they don't have programs to support them, or there's not enough of them. So there are ways to have a career without having to go to school. But I think if it starts in the high school level and you're exposed to them, you can figure out whether or not you like it. And, for me, computers was a big thing. I enjoyed it. I think coding was started coming out at that time too, in my senior year. And it exploded from there. And I was excited about all of it. Do I use it now? No, but I understand it. I understand what the purpose is. And I can have those communications with people based on that and everything else I've learned. I wish that they would expand the curriculum in schools to include more of these types of courses. I think one of the other ones that was a business course, how to go on an interview, how to balance your checkbook, how to take out a loan, and how to interpret the stock market. They don't teach you any of that anymore. And that was something that was a staple when I went to school. So give people those opportunities, give them the exposure, let them make more informed choices before they pick a degree in college.
Agreed. And I guess the simple question is, why has it changed? Do you think it's just funding? Do you think it's, is it a money thing? What could be the problem that causes, again, because this is not just a Florida thing. Virginia, same way. Jersey, same thing. New York, same thing. We'll call it the East Coast. I know some Midwesterners, they still have some shop classes here and there, but most of it's gone to like VOTech schools, where if you're a kid who they don't believe is going to be college bound, they'll transition you to a specialty Voltex style school where you'll get your degree, but you'll also learn certifications or opportunities to be certified. Not as much in automotive and maybe some of the higher end ASC certifications, but basic level entry, plumbing one, maybe electrical one, HVA one type stuff, where it gives you the basic 101 options. But why has it changed? What do you think the issue is?
I think funding is definitely one of them. Structure is another. So I'll call out the fact that I went to school on Long Island, and we had BOCES, which was a vocational segment of the school district. And you were allowed to segment your day where you had your core classes, and then you took a couple of specialty classes and you got bused to those locations, and you could learn a trade. We had anything from learning how to be a horse jockey, which, fun fact, I really wanted to do that because I'm short. And yeah, it's a funny story, but yeah, I was going to do that and my parents talked me out of it. But it was one of those where you could do that. You could learn how to do a trade. You could learn how to be more involved in the finance world. There were different aspects. I think there were some veterinarian services that you could do it. Here in Florida, I know that they have the lottery system for you to do, and forgive me, the name is escaping. It's not a STEM program, but it's
the magnet schools or something like that.
Thank you. The magnet schools. Now, my eldest was able to get into the computer one at Palm Beach Central. He happened to win that lottery and he happened to get in. And he enjoyed the program. He learned a lot of different things and he utilizes it today for whatever he's working on. My other son was not as fortunate. He didn't get into that lottery. So here you are again with the funding to only take a certain amount of students. I think Central also has culinary as one of them. Wellington has marketing. They have veterinarian services. All great programs, but only a segment of the population gets in them, and they're being bused from other schools. So we have a much different structure here in Florida than we do in New York, where the districts were smaller. They were segmented by where you lived. And here I think we have a number of towns that will be like, I think even going to Suncoast High School, people from Wellington could go to Suncoast. But then the people who live near Suncoast may have trouble getting in there because of all this lottery. I don't know if lottery is necessarily the answer to our programming problems, but funding is definitely it. Structure is the other part of it, and interest is the other. Having the right programs in place for the kids to be interested to take them is also key. So I don't know how you strike the balance in the geographical area that you're in, but it has to start with talking with the community to find out what do the kids want. And trying to grow the programming around that. And then I think the funding will come. There's a lot of great donation programs, that are coming into the system that could help mitigate some of those programs if people know that they're coming.
Agreed. I couldn't have said it any better. I think the conversation starts somewhere, and it's got to start here. It's got to happen. If we don't, I have 3 young kids myself. If it doesn't, what are we all doing, right? What is the next option? Hoping? Hope does not get us anything. Hope is not a plan. Hope is just some hope. So with that said, I know we could sit here probably all day and talk about this, but I'd like to always ask my podcast professionals who come on and talk about all the wonderful things about their business, about their backgrounds. 2 questions. It's kind of one question with 2 parts. Hard hitting, real hard hitting. I say the same thing every single time. I sound like a broken record. If you could ask one person, one question, dead or alive, who would that person be? And what would that question be you'd ask?
Oh boy, okay. It would probably be one of my parents. And both of my parents are not from this country. They came from different continents, and they both came from a very difficult life. And I think if I had to go back and ask them anything, I would ask them if they knew or felt that where they ended up in their life was what they had been happiest with. Little background, my dad is from Tunisia, which is in the northern top of Africa, and my mother is from Brazil. And so they met in New York at a dance hall. 4 days later, married kind of thing. Yeah, it's a very crazy story. And the both of them were your typical come to the United States and get the, make the American dream happen. And they were, both of them, very poor. So they did not have, in the eyes of the world, have super accolades with what they did with their lives. But they did manage to accomplish whatever was important to them at that time. My whole point would be, and I think about it, and because they're both gone now, I would think about it and say, was this what you wanted for yourself? And if you could go back and change it, what would you have done differently? I think I would know the answers, but I think I would prefer to have gotten their exact response to really understand where their mindset was.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that's a great question. I would love to hear the answer as well myself. Well, Joanna, I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you for sharing your insights locally and nationally. It's been really a pleasure. But before we go, how can people find you? Website, Instagram, Facebook? I heard LinkedIn. How do we find you?
Fantastic. Well, thanks for that. Thanks for having me too. I am basically everywhere. I am on Facebook. I am on Instagram. I am on TikTok, begrudgingly, because I don't know how to use it very much, but I'm on there. I'm hoping to get a little bit better. I am definitely on LinkedIn. My website is propelresume.com. If anyone needs to reach out to me by email, it's hello@propelresume.com. And I have a local phone number of 561-291-8832. And I always offer one free session for every person that comes in the door, just so I can understand what your story is, and also to make sure that we're a good fit in case you decide that you need help. You always want to make sure you're hiring the right person for you.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for that. And I appreciate you coming on today. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Rudy, for everything. Great to see you.